In this video, we're going to talk about a very controversial topic that has sparked a lot of debate among fans of the franchise: the gender swapping of certain characters in Mortal Kombat. And not just in MK1, this is something that has actually happened in previous Mortal Kombat games as well, but in a more natural way that many players never even noticed.
There's no doubt that Sektor and Cyrax in Liu Kang's new era are the characters at the center of this entire gender swap discussion. The original Sektor, from the first and second timelines, is an extremely beloved character among fans, and was highly requested to return as a DLC in MK1. Rumors of his return were constant, even though many of us already knew a gender swap would come with it, something that upset a large portion of the fanbase. The classic Sektor was an extremely brutal character. Depending on the timeline, he was the son of the Lin Kuei Grandmaster, and he volunteered for the clan's cyber initiative because he was obsessed with becoming the strongest warrior in the group. He didn't think twice about sacrificing his body and humanity to become a cold, emotionless machine, all for the sake of pushing his combat capabilities to the absolute limit. He became the most ruthless cyborg in the entire franchise, with his iconic rage-red look and a massive arsenal of weapons. The design fit him perfectly because even before becoming a cyborg, he already showed almost no humanity. He was basically a living killing machine.
Sektor had finally seized control of the Lin Kuei.
Sektor's story was particularly interesting because he actually achieved what he wanted. He hunted down his greatest enemy, Kuai Liang, and even forced him to undergo the cyber initiative as well, just like Smoke. In the original timeline, it was Sektor's actions and influence that pushed Cyrax to become excited about the cyber initiative, leading him to volunteer as the second member of the clan to undergo the process. In the second timeline, created during the events of Mortal Kombat 2011, things changed. Cyrax becomes openly opposed to the Grandmaster's plan to turn the Lin Kuei ninjas into cyborgs, especially after discovering the truth about the clan's relationship with Shang Tsung and his sinister schemes. When Cyrax refuses to kill Johnny Cage and rebels against his own clan, he ends up being captured and forcibly transformed into a robot. In Mortal Kombat 11, he finally gains redemption when he sacrifices himself to help Scorpion and Sub-Zero, Kuai Liang. So, with all that in mind, you can already understand how big the backlash was bound to be once the news about a gender swap for Cyrax and Sektor in MK1 started circulating. The new Sektor and Cyrax in MK1 try to emulate a story similar to what we saw in the past, but they're far, very far from having the same charm or charisma as the original characters. And let's start with the basics. They're not cyborgs. They're just wearing robotic suits, basically Iron Man-style armor. Their designs are actually cool, okay? They kept the same weapon themes, gadgets, and all that. But what made the old versions so compelling was the fact that they sacrificed their humanity for the clan. They allowed their bodies to be torn apart and turned into assassin cyborgs. That was the true essence of Cyrax and Sektor. And based on everything we've talked about so far, that is what needed to be preserved. What really fuels the debate among the fanbase is whether the gender swap was even necessary and whether it added anything meaningful to the story. And after the release of the Reign of Chaos expansion, the general consensus is that it wasn't. From everything I've seen since launch, the main criticism from fans isn't even the gender swap itself. It's the fact that Mortal Kombat already has plenty of amazing female characters who were completely left out. Sonya Blade, for example, the very first female character in the franchise, wasn't included in the story mode or the main roster of MK1. She only appears as a cameo fighter. Jade, the green-clad ninja, was also left out of MK1. Maybe if they had introduced new female characters with strong development instead of replacing Cyrax and Sektor, the complaints either wouldn't exist, or at least the backlash would have been way smaller. The male versions of Sektor and Cyrax that we saw in previous games had incredibly interesting stories tied to the complicated history of the Lin Kuei clan, and they already had a solid fan base behind them. And yes, I know it's not really fair to compare years and years of lore from the classic Sektor and Cyrax with the very shallow participation their new versions got in a weak DLC, but even so, I don't think we should focus only on the negative side. There actually were some interesting points. Sektor, for instance, has a potentially promising story. She is the daughter of the former weaponsmith, deeply loyal to Sub-Zero, and willing to do absolutely anything for her Grandmaster and her clan. She also has very advanced technological knowledge, which could hint at a future where she undergoes a full cybernetic transformation, bringing back some of the classic essence of the character. As for Cyrax, I honestly think she gained more than she lost. The old Cyrax was fun to play, sure, but he rarely got much narrative attention. Fans were always more focused on Sektor going berserk, killing everyone, or Smoke with his mysterious behavior and system glitches. Cyrax, while cool, never had that much story development. Everything about him was pretty basic. This new version, however, brings a deeper narrative. We're talking about a warrior who was manipulated by Sektor and by her Grand Master Sub-Zero. And on top of that, at the end of the Reign of Chaos expansion, she becomes a Shirai Ryu, which is a huge shift, one that could be explored in really interesting ways moving forward.
I feel like I'm heavily sauced.
It appears infinite. How are we inside a citadel?
What if I told you that Madame Bo is basically the Bo Rai Cho of Liu Kang's new era? Well, that's not exactly a shocking statement. Fans have been saying and speculating about that since day one. But honestly, this is one of those changes that doesn't really bother me. In the previous timelines, Bo Rai Cho was a legendary fighter who trained several important warriors in the franchise, including Liu Kang and Kung Lao. His look and fighting style were intentionally goofy and attention-grabbing. In Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, we are introduced to the master of Liu Kang and Kung Lao, the guy who trained two of Earthrealm's greatest fighters. You'd expect someone dignified, someone respectable, someone serious. And what does the story give us? A heavily overweight, constantly drunk old man who fights using the drunken fist, throwing burps, farts, and vomit attacks in the middle of battle. Honestly, it was hilarious. But I'll admit, the way Bo Rai Cho is portrayed is really silly, and plenty of people aren't fans of it. In MKX, the developers toned him down a bit and made him look more presentable, but people still remember his earlier over-the-top portrayal. Despite that, Madame Bo definitely shares some traits with Bo Rai Cho, plus one extra detail. The old lady smokes like a chimney.
So, Madame Bo, are they ready?
A bit thick in the head, perhaps. But they are ready.
I actually like the idea of presenting an elderly woman who looks calm, runs a respectable establishment, and still helps train warriors like Raiden and Kung Lao. This is one of the good examples showing that gender swapping isn't the issue, it's how it's done and how well it fits the story. My only complaint is that Madame Bo didn't get enough screen time, so we haven't had the chance to grow attached to her yet. Maybe that'll change in the future. She's a charming old lady after all. And please, no fart-based moves, okay? This is Mortal Kombat, not an Adam Sandler movie.
If you're finished, there's only one thing left to do. Which one of you gets the bad news?
Not me. I'm still 3 mil in the hole on Sento.
In some of the game's dialogue, there are mentions of Raiden's sister, which adds a completely new element to this rewritten timeline. One of the most revealing lines suggests that Madame Bo believes she's already ready for combat, which implies that this character might play a significant role in the near future.
Madame Bo thinks your sister is ready.
I agree. She'll make an excellent Shaolin.
The thing is, her exact identity is still a mystery, which opens the door to several interpretations. And this is where things get interesting. As we know from previous timelines, Fujin, the god of wind, used to be Raiden's brother, which naturally makes us wonder how this relationship may have changed in the timeline rewritten by Liu Kang. As we also know, in this new era, Raiden is no longer the thunder god, but a regular human warrior who received his lightning powers through an amulet and magic. This leads to the possibility that Fujin may have undergone a similar transformation, with one big twist. Fujin might no longer be the same Fujin we know, having had the gender swapped, just like Bo Rai Cho, Sektor and Cyrax. If Raiden's origin was completely rewritten, it's very possible that his sibling was radically changed as well. Maybe in this reality, Fujin was recreated as a woman instead of a man. This would explain the mention of Raiden having a sister, and would keep the internal logic of the franchise's mythology, where the two have always shared a special connection. If that's the case, this new female version of Fujin might end up inheriting wind powers in a way similar to Raiden, whether through training, magical artifacts, or even the influence of higher forces. She could wield control over the wind, filling a role similar to Storm from the X-Men, manipulating air currents, hurricanes, and powerful gusts in battle. That wouldn't just make her a formidable fighter, it would also maintain the cosmic balance of the series, where there are always deities and warriors tied to the elemental forces of nature.
So I use the hourglass to live hundreds of thousands of lifetimes.
If this theory turns out to be true, we'd have a very interesting development in Mortal Kombat's mythology. The connection between Raiden and Fujin would remain intact, but in a completely new form, reintroducing one of the franchise's classic characters in a fresh and unexpected way. And honestly, if this really happens, I just hope it's done with the proper care and good writing it deserves.
And we also got Janet Cage. So what is there to say about this character? Honestly, not much, because unlike the others we've talked about here, Janet isn't replacing anyone, and she isn't meant to. She's simply a multiverse variant in MK's timeline, a female version of Johnny Cage. And she actually turned out pretty cool, right? Janet works because she doesn't show up to replace anyone. The idea isn't to erase Johnny Cage from the story. She's just a variant who can add to the game. Someone who can team up with Johnny, not take his place in the franchise. But over time, I really started to like the concept. Visually, she works, and she's just as funny and entertaining as Johnny. Now let's talk about a gender swap that was done in a way so cohesive that you probably didn't even notice it. Frost is essentially a copy of Sub-Zero, whether it's her powers, her visual style, or her fighting techniques. What sets her apart from her former master is her personality, which, paired with Kuai Liang's, creates the classic dynamic: the arrogant apprentice and the master seeking redemption. Frost is basically a replacement Sub-Zero, ready to step in whenever the story might need it. She's arrogant and proud, but she's skilled, and has an ego the size of Outworld. What's cool about Frost is that she combines the best traits of both Sub-Zeros, the skills and visual style of Kuai Liang, and the arrogance and ego of Bi-Han. And honestly, that's awesome. I'm biased when it comes to Frost. I think she's an excellent character, even though she was never given a ton of depth. I admit that part. But here's my point. Right now, after the events of MK1 and Reign of Chaos, there is no Sub-Zero in the franchise, and therefore no Lin Kuei Grandmaster either. Kuai Liang is now Scorpion, Bi-Han became Noob Saibot, and is currently in a deep coma. And when he wakes up, he'll likely remain in that shadowy form. And assuming Sektor becomes the new Grandmaster of the Lin Kuei, then what happens to the Sub-Zero mantle? It could easily go to Frost, stepping in as Bi-Han's apprentice, inheriting the name Sub-Zero, and honoring the legacy behind those colors.
I was your heir apparent.
If only you'd been more patient, Frost.
Like I'm patiently waiting to kill you?
Having Frost become the new Sub-Zero would be a very interesting move. It fits perfectly with the franchise's recent gender swaps, and honestly, I don't think it would be controversial at all. She has every necessary attribute to take on the role, and it wouldn't feel forced. We already know this character and exactly how far her ambition can take her. Plus, in this new timeline, she could be a student of Bi-Han, not Kuai Liang, which makes way more sense. Frost and Bi-Han have far more in common than she ever had with Kuai Liang. Seeing a female Sub-Zero with Frost taking up the mantle would be incredible. It would give Bi-Han room to fully embrace his dark alter ego, Noob, and Kuai Liang is already on a completely different path. Some people might argue Hanzo could become the new Sub-Zero. After all, his whole story was stolen by Kuai Liang, so it would be poetic justice. But I'm against that. I already find it weird enough that Kuai Liang became Scorpion. Making another swap just for the sake of symmetry would only make things messier. Frost, on the other hand, filling that role? That would be awesome. A quick introduction showing that Baihan trained her when she was younger, teaching her how to use her powers while also passing down his signature arrogance to inflate her ego would be more than enough to present her in the new era. And just like that, we'd have the new Sub-Zero. No pandering, no forced messaging, just natural, cohesive storytelling.
From now on, no one will overlook my greatness. I'll never be dismissed again.